everybody for joining the webinar. We are going to start the webinar exactly in next 2 minutes. Thank you for joining us. Welcome everybody to the IVIS Power webinar series. Today we are going to discuss on how to choose your application security testing vendor. I'm going to primarily discuss on 4 key areas. Number 1, which are the key technologies which are there and how should you choose one? Which are the available delivery model or the execution model and which one should you choose and when? The third thing which we'll discuss will be how to choose your application security testing consultant, and finally how to benchmark your application security testing scanner. So these are the 4 things which we'll discuss today, and we will keep this presentation short. We are going to cover everything in 15 minutes or at most a few minutes more. And what I can assure you is what I'm going to present to you now, it's a great checklist. It's a nice combination of all the things which you probably need to know in short and sweet way. This next 15 minutes should be able to save at least a couple of hours for you. So, a quick brief on IVIS. IVIS is into cloud-based application penetration testing. We provide zero false positive guarantee. We conduct business logic penetration testing with 100% WASP class coverage. IVIS is funded by IDG Ventures. We discovered more than 30 zero-day vulnerabilities in products like Microsoft BitLocker, McAfee SafeBoot, Intel, HP, and Lenovo's BIOS security, and several more. Today, IVIS is used by more than 400 enterprise customers across the globe. IVIS is also recognized by Gartner in the Hype Cycle. In fact, two of the Hype Cycles published by Gartner. So let's look into which are the technology options which we have when we need to consider application security testing. So there are 2 main options. One is the static application security testing, which is SAST, and the second is dynamic application security testing, or the DAST. So what is static application security testing? So static application security testing is the process of testing your application using the binary or the source code. So the application is not in a running state. You just have the code or the binary and you can figure out the flaws. So which are the advantages of SAST? The advantages are it can pinpoint the location of the flaw in the code. It can detect vulnerabilities before it is deployed. Imagine you want to implement the secure SDLC. You don't need a running application to conduct SAST, so you can do the testing even while the application is being built. The third advantage is that you can find the vulnerability in the earlier phase of the application development lifecycle. Now, what are the disadvantages? One is it cannot find the vulnerabilities located outside the code or in third-party interfacing. Consider this situation where you are integrating with a third-party payment gateway. If the payment gateway integration is not done properly, a SaaS cannot detect that. It cannot find out logical vulnerabilities, like for example, in a banking application we once discovered that you could do negative amount transfer, like I can send my friend or maybe enemy whom I don't like minus $10,000 and my bank balance gets increased by $10,000 and his gets decreased. So this kind of logical flaws cannot be detected by SaaS. You cannot discover vulnerabilities related to operational deployment because it's not deployed. And it's more expensive and has a higher overhead in terms of adoption. And of course it needs very well-trained manpower to deploy and manage SaaS. And the last but not the least, you need the source code or the binaries, and sometimes organizations are not willing to share their source code or the binaries. Now back to DAST, or Dynamic Application Security Testing. DAST does the testing on a running application. So you don't need the code. It can detect vulnerabilities related to operational deployment. It can figure out the business logic flaws. Of course, if you're using hybrid testing, that's with manual augmentation, or else the automated scanners also cannot figure out all the business logic flaws. It does not need any access to code, and that's the reason why DAST has been a lot more widely adopted globally, because it's a lot easier to adopt, and it's lower in cost, and it's more mature in terms of the industry adoption. And it can detect vulnerabilities outside the code or in the third-party interfacing. So in DAST, you can figure that out, whereas in SaaS, you can't. So what's the disadvantage? The disadvantage is that it cannot pinpoint the exact location of the vulnerability in the code. And you will not be able to figure out whether your team has done a good job in terms of adherence to the coding guidelines, etc. So it's not the perfect thing when it comes to secure SDLC adoption. So DAST or SAST, which one should I choose? I personally believe, and I believe that's what the industry also believes, that you should adopt DAST first. The reason is the low-hanging fruit. It's exactly how a hacker is going to target your application. So it's a low-hanging fruit, it's easy to adopt, it's less expensive, and it's more mature in terms of industry adoption. So the first easy step, conduct DAST. And the next step, which is the ideal state, is interactive application security testing, which is the combination of SAST and DAST. The advantage of that combination is that it has got lower false negatives. You will not miss as many vulnerabilities as you will miss in conducting either SAST or DAST separately. It has got better coverage. Of course, it's more costly, and it has got higher overhead. Which are the execution of the delivery models? We discussed about the two primary technologies, but then it can be executed or delivered in three major ways. You can have in-house model, you can go to consultants, or you can use the cloud. In case of in-house, you have the data and the quality under your control. Of course, it's not necessary that your control means always the best, but if you have good control, then that's good. Of course, you need to buy the software license, and you need to manually remove false positive and conduct business logic tests, because these are the things which tools can't cover. So you need to hire and retain talent. And it's not very easy to scale an in-house team. The other option is consultants. Consultants are good in quality, unlike the tools which lack in terms of quality. It's very good for non-standard applications because they got experts with them. It's costly and also less flexible in terms of timing. You can't expect consultants to work during the weekends in a normal course of time, in a normal course. And consultants cannot scale beyond a point, because if you have got some 400 applications which has got monthly release cycle, which makes it a huge number of thousands of tests, typically consultant organizations will not have so many people. So they're good for non-standard and complex applications. The cloud with human intervention, and that's the model where you have the automation plus you got the manual, but over the cloud. It's good in quality, it's scalable, however it's a packaged service, and sometimes it might not satisfy the non-standard cases. It's good for the standard applications. Probably the 80 to 90% of the applications, it's a great solution, but there will be non-standard cases where you might have to go either in-house or consultants. So which option should I choose? In-house is great if you cannot outsource testing due to internal controls, or you want to implement secure SDLC. In that case, you need things to be in-house. And it's very important if you can hire and retain application security testing teams. And by the way, less than 1% of organizations can probably do that. It's very tough to hire people, and it's more tough to retain them. Consultants, they're good for non-standard and complex application, and if you don't have in-house team. And the third, cloud, it's best for standard applications, it's the normal applications, web-based applications. The advantage is there's no license cost, no people cost, and it's very scalable. So, back to our main topic. How do we evaluate a consultant? So what I have done is I have grouped the questions into 5 main categories, and you can actually ask the consultants these questions, and it's a nice checklist which you can use while evaluating your consultant. So out of these 5 buckets, the first one is the quality. So you need to know who will be conducting the test. When you hire a consultant, it's extremely important to know the individual. It's not just the organization, or rather I'll say it's not the organization, it's the person who's going to conduct the test. So you need to know the background of that person. Which are the tools they're going to use during the testing? There are lots of consulting houses that believe that they don't need automated tools. It's not so. Automated tools are great in terms of coverage, but they miss out a lot of stuff. So you need a good balance between the tools and the people. And you need to know which tool are they using. Is it one of the top 3 tools in the industry? How good is the coverage of that tool? So which are the tools they're using? If they use multiple tools, it's better. And what's the methodology of security testing? This is extremely critical. Different organizations can have different methodology, but you need to figure out from the methodology whether the key elements are being covered, and which are those key elements. Number 1, false positive. Number 2, business logic or logical vulnerabilities. That's the vulnerabilities which automated scanners need, or the coverage. So I'll say false positive and coverage. These are the 2 main factors. So I'll give you an example, and this is the example from IVIS. We are into cloud-based application security testing, but we have a kind of human-augmented hybrid model behind the scene. So I'll explain you our model. That's more like an example. Different organizations can have different kind of models, and it could be any of those models could be good if they are covering these 2 areas, false positives and false negatives. So in our case, what we do is the step 1 is what we call is pre-qualification, in which we understand the application. We try to understand the business logic. We try to understand the threat model. Okay, what we do a kind of high-level threat modeling. We understand the attack surface, and based on that, we configure the scanner. And that's very important. If the scanner is not configured and if the test cases are not well defined, then the coverage will not be good. The next phase is the automated scanning, where the automated tools are used. We use a kind of hybrid methodology combining automation and humans. So the automated testing is the second phase. The third phase is the false positive removal, which we which we try to achieve by a combination of automation as well as manual checks. And the final phase is the business logic testing. Here we figure out are the payment gateway integration, is it done properly? Can I do price manipulation? Can I do things like privilege escalation? Can user A see user B's data, etc.? So those kind of complex tests are done in the 4th phase. So you need to ask what's the methodology of the consultant and figure out whether they are removing false positives in the right manner, whether they are covering and reducing false negatives as much as possible. And the next question is, are they going to conduct the business logic testing, which I covered just a while back? How are they going to ensure coverage? Do they have a checklist? Can they share that with you? Or is it that it's going to be dependent on that individual? It's not a great idea to be dependent on an individual, even if he's great, because it depends on his mood. If he had a bad fight with his wife or his girlfriend just before coming for the testing, he will do a lousy job. So it's very important to see what kind of processes they have. Do they have a checklist which will ensure despite whatever be the mental condition, the test cases will be covered. The next one is where is he going to store the data? Is it going to be in his laptop? What kind of controls are there in the laptop to secure your data? So that's the other thing which you need to see. And how is the reporting quality? You should ask for a sample report and see does the report quality meet the kind of requirements which you have in the organization. Is the consultant flexible enough to change the reporting, which typically they are. The next is the credibility and the stability. So how many application security tests did the person conduct before? Are those applications similar to yours? It's very important that they should be similar to yours. What are the contributions of the tester in the security research? This is very, very important. If there's a guy who has discovered vulnerabilities of 0 days before, if he has published research papers, he has written tools, etc., then that's a great thing. You need guys like that. Does the vendor meet the compliance specific expectations which you have? Can you verify or do the background check of the individual tester? What's the financial stability of the organization? So these are some of the things which you need to know. The next thing is the flexibility and the scalability. In terms of flexibility, are they flexible enough to do non-business hour testing? Because sometimes your business might need that. Can they do tests during the weekends? Can they meet up to your scalability requirements? If you have hundreds of apps, do they have enough people to support you? Can they start a test in particular hours of notice? You might need to start a test in just a 5-hour notice or a single day notice. Can they do that? Can they give that SLA? Next is the management part. How does it integrate with the collaborative solutions which you have, the GRC solution or the dashboard or the QA or the ticketing systems? Will they give you reports which can be uploaded there? The other part is the financial aspect. What's the cost per man day? And how many days are required for the testing? So that's going to give you the total cost of test per application. Now the next thing is very important, that considering that the cost per application security testing is going to be the amount which you see, you need to see that does that satisfy your requirements. If you have n number of applications, you need to create buckets that out of this number of applications, X are very critical, Y are not so critical. I need to test these X applications during every release cycle because they're business critical, and the Y I can afford to do maybe once in a year or a couple of times a year. So if you now add up all those, can you afford a consultant? Or is it that you need an alternative model? You need to look into that aspect. It's not just about the cost, it's also about the overall coverage. So next part is how do you benchmark a tool. In case of tools, the dynamics will be a little bit different, though the principles are similar. Again, we got a few buckets. One is the quality, and in the quality you need to figure out what's the rate of false positive. Now, this is not very easy to understand. I mean, there are not too many benchmarks, but then if the vendor can provide you some benchmark, ask for that. Or if you can do a evaluation of a few scanners, then you can yourself measure it. So you can create a Excel sheet and see how many false positives are there, how many vulnerabilities which it has reported are not true. Because you don't want to manually weed out all these false positives. That's a lot of cost in terms of human labor. How many classes of vulnerabilities does it cover? You can ask the vendor. You can send them the checklist. You can just go to WASC, the Web Application Security Consortium website, figure out the WASC 1 or WASC 2 classes, and ask them how many of these classes do you cover. Typically, the tools cover 17 or 18 of the 26 WASC 1 classes. How many classes it does not cover? You need to see, are those classes critical for your business? How good is the coverage of the crawler? This is very important. Some of the best scanners which are available take a lot of time to scan because they crawl very nicely. So you need to, if the crawler is not able to reach a part of the application, that remains untested. So is there a benchmark in terms of the crawling? How many URLs it could crawl? You need to do that benchmarking. Can it do role-based testing or the authenticated scans? This is very important. Does it test JavaScript or web services, AJAX, and the new technologies like HTML, Silverlight, etc.? The next bucket is performance and ease of use. How many scans can it run in parallel? And many scanners might say like you can do 3 scans or 5 scans in parallel, but in reality, can it really manage that? How good is its memory management? Does it kind of become unusable after you have 2 scans in parallel? How long does it take to run? I mean, this is very interesting because quicker might not be better. Quicker could mean that it is less comprehensive. Again, slower does not mean that it is better. So you need to see the number of checks per hour and also the total number of hours, both. How long does it take to learn and configure to make it work effectively? Because configuring the scanner is very important. Is it very complex? What kind of controls do you have? Can you have whitelisting or blacklisting of URLs? Because there are lots of applications which has got form fields for like contact sales page. Now, the moment you start scanning, the sales guys are flooded with all these junk junk requests. So you don't want that. So you want a way to blacklist those URLs. What's the credibility in terms of how many organizations use the tool, how satisfied are they, and are there any industry recognition or analyst mentions like that of Gartner, etc. Though, I mean, it's good, but it doesn't mean that they're the best. I believe the satisfied customers are the best indicators. However, analyst mentions are definitely a good thing. Financials, how much does the scanner cost? What are the licensing terms? So you need to look into the licensing terms, and sometimes you'll be pretty amazed in terms of the terms which are there inside. And what's the total cost? It's very important. Total cost, tool plus people, because that's what is very important for you. It's not just the cost of the tool. If you add up the tool cost and the people cost, then you can figure out the total cost, and then you need to see the cost per test. And sometimes this becomes very surprising, that you might see that the cost per test becomes too high and it's almost as high as that of consultants. In that case, you need to see how can you make your internal organization more efficient. So that's all in terms of benchmarking a tool. So we covered the 4 key areas about the technologies, the available delivery options, and how to benchmark a tool, and how to evaluate a application security testing consultant. So that's all from my side today. If you have any question, please type it in the chat box and I'll try to answer them. Yes, I got a question. Will we have a copy of the PPT available? Yes, definitely. We will have the copy of the PPT available. We are going to host it on our website, and we are also going to have the recording available. That's the second question. Can we have the audio as well? Yes, we'll have the recording available again on the website. What we will do is after the event is done, on Friday you will receive an email with the link of the PPT as well as the video. You'll get both of them. And of course there's another checklist which is there on our website, which covers all these factors which we mentioned in a nice tabular manner. It just reduces your job. I got a question like, which application security scanner do I recommend? Okay, that's a tough question. So in terms of application security scanners, you can actually just give a Google search and see which are the top scanners available. And there's a benchmarking report which was available a while back, I think a couple of years back. There's a guy who did some benchmarking. If I can pull that out, I'll send you a link, all of you a link for that. You can just see how he benchmarked it. Of course, I don't personally have buy-in for all his results, but that's a that's a nice example, I would say. The next question which I have is, do I think that the commercial scanners are better than open source alternatives? The answer is yes, and they are like way ahead. And they are absolutely way ahead of the open source alternatives. It's only in very recent times that some of the open source scanners have started becoming good, but still they are far behind when it comes to commercial scanners. In network scanning, you will see that the open source scanners are really good. Like Nessus is extremely good. Of course, Nessus is now running not like a normal open source project. It's a full-fledged company with a huge backing of venture funding, so they're able to maintain the quality. But in case of application scanners, we're a little bit behind. The next question which I have is there any tool that can be used for ensuring HIPAA compliance? In fact, most of the scanners which you have are more or less compliant with HIPAA requirements. So when it comes to the compliance, the overall requirement from any compliance is very similar. It's just the matter of serving the food in a different ways. It's more of a matter of garnishing. So you just need to see whether the scanner supports a HIPAA compliance report. In terms of the testing quality, I think most of the scanners will do the job. Now, what is extremely important is the next part, that none of the compliances are actually, or having a compliance does not mean that you are secure. In fact, we did a kind of study of testing results of our 400 plus customers last year, and we came up with the analytics. And what we saw was that there was extremely low correlation between the organizations who are compliant and their level of security, which we measured by vulnerability density, and the organizations who did not have compliance. So even if you need HIPAA compliance, you can just use any of the scanners and see if they have a HIPAA compliant reporting or not. But it's just a suggestion that you should go one step beyond and look beyond the compliance and look for real security. So great. I think that's all, and there's not too many other questions. I would like to thank all of you. I think this has been a great attendance. Thanks a lot for joining this webinar. I hope you found this useful. We will come up with our next power webinar, which will be again short and sweet because we value your time. We know you are busy, and we will try to deliver you something which is useful to you. Thanks a lot, and have a wonderful day.